So we're starting our unit on quadratics today, and we're going to get into a bunch of like the characteristics and what exactly those are tomorrow. But today you're just going to solve them. So when you're solving the quadratics, it's like solving a regular equation, right? We're trying to figure out what x is. So because these are like x squared, you could have up to 2 possible answers, right? So you've got a few steps to help you do that. So the first thing that you need to do is set your equation equal to 0. So every single time you're trying to solve a quadratic, you got to set it equal to 0 first. And if it's not equal to 0, so like if you look down at number 5, that's not equal to 0. So the first thing that we're going to have to do there is what? Make it equal to 0. So you're going to have to move that 27 over, yeah? So step 1, always get your equation equal to 0. Then you're going to factor it. This is why we spent that time reviewing factoring yesterday. Do y'all remember the around the room thing that you did? Remember how to factor? Like drop it low? Or X factor? Yeah, so you got to do that again today. Once you factor it, you're going to set each of your factors equal to 0. And then you're going to solve. So once you solve, you get your solutions. We have a bunch of different words that we use for that, so you can call them solutions. They may be called zeros. They may be called roots. Zeros, roots, solutions, or they even call them x-intercepts, because that's what they are. So all 4 of those things, solutions, roots, zeros, x-intercepts, they all mean the same thing. They're all asking for the same thing. So if you have a problem that asks you to find your solutions, or your zeros, or your roots, or your x-intercepts, they're all asking you to do the exact same thing. Just solve the quadratic, okay? Questions so far? Alright, so we're going to go ahead and do the first one. So our equation right here, we've got x plus 3 times x minus 5 equals 0. So if we're solving, we're going to follow our steps. You have to make sure that your equation is equal to 0. Are we equal to 0? Yes, so we're good to go there. Step 2 says to factor. Is this already factored? Yeah, so we don't have to do anything there. Step 3, set each factor equal to 0. So what's our first factor here? X plus 3, so we will say x plus 3 equals 0. What's our second factor there? X minus 5. And we'll say that equals 0. So then step 4 says to solve. So we're going to solve each equation individually, and we're going to end up with 2 answers. So you've got x plus 3 equals 0. We need to solve for x. What are you going to do? Minus 3. So what does x equal? Negative 3. Then for our second equation, you have x minus 5 equals 0. You need to get x by itself, so what are you going to do? Add 5. So what does x equal there? 5. So your solutions are negative 3 and positive 5. So that means that your graph, when we go graph this, it's going to cross at negative 3 and positive 5. That's why we also call them x-intercepts, or your zeros, or your roots, your solutions. They're all the same thing. So I know right now this is a little abstract because we don't have a whole lot of context for it, but we're going to talk about what all these things are more tomorrow. Do we have any questions so far? So we're okay? Alright. So looking at number 2, we're going to go ahead and solve that one as well. So step 1, make sure you're equal to 0. Are we equal to 0? Yep. Step 2, what do you do? Factor. Are we factored? Yep, so we're going to go there. Step 3, set each factor equal to 0. What's our first factor? So 3t plus 5 equals 0. What's your second factor? T minus 3 equals 0. Step 4, you got to solve. So starting with 3t plus 5, how are we going to get t by itself there? Minus 5. And then what? So what does t equal? Negative 5 over 3. That's one answer. Then for our second equation over there, we've got t minus 3. How are we going to get t by itself? So what does t equal? 3. So So our two solutions, or our two roots, or our two zeros, or our two x-intercepts are -5/3 and +3. Is that okay? Questions? Are y'all noticing anything yet? Do you see any patterns? Look at where we started and our answers. What happened? You just flipped the sign. So over here, what happened? You just change your signs, right? That's going to be true about every time, y'all. So whatever your factors are, change your signs. Those will be your zeros. If there's a number in front, you'll just have to divide by that. Do y'all remember when we did like your rainbow method factoring? And we had to swing that denominator to the front? That's where that's coming from. Okay? So I think we'll do that on number 6, just in case. All right, so looking at number 3. What do you do first? What's step 1? Equal to 0. Are we equal to 0?
Yes.
Yep, so we're good to go. What's step 2? Factor. So when you are factoring anything ever, what do you always check for first?
Yeah.
Do we have one here? What do they both have? X. So we can pull out an X. What's going to be left inside your parentheses? Because x squared divided by x is just x. -11x divided by x is just -11. Is that okay? Do I remember how to factor out a GCF?
Yeah.
If not, we need to go home and review that because you gotta know how to factor. So once you're factored, what is step 3? So your factor is equal to 0. What is our first factor here? We have x minus 11. What else do we have? X. So you've got x equals 0 and x minus 11 equals 0. So the x equals 0, that's already solved. You don't have to do anything else there. Then we've got x minus 11 equals 0. So how do you get x by itself? Add 11. So what does x equal? 11. Questions? Alright. You ready to try another one? Okay, so looking at number 4. What is step 1? Set it equal to 0. Are we equal to 0? Yep, so you're good there. What's step 2? Factor. So when you're factoring anything ever, what do you always check for first? GCF. Do we have one here? Nope, so you don't have to worry about that. Now, how would we go about factoring a trinomial where our leading coefficient is 1? Do what? You have difference of squares, drop it lower, x factor, and rainbow. Drop it low. So drop your parentheses, or set up your parentheses. What do we drop first? What do you always keep? First sign. Your second sign is a minus, so what does that mean about our answers? Opposite. So if we have a plus, we need a minus. You're looking for factors of 15 that subtract to be 2. 5 and 3, which one goes first? Is that alright? So once you're factored, what do you do from there? So your factor is equal to 0. What's our first factor? So x plus 5 equals 0. And x minus 3 equals 0. So at that point, you know you're just going to switch your signs, right? So x is -5 and x is +3. Is that okay? Do you have any questions right now? Anything we're not sure about, don't quite understand? Are we remembering how to factor?
Yeah.
Do we need to go home and practice a little bit more on our own, probably?
Okay, wait, so
by whatever's in front. What do you mean?
Like, you said both, and then it's just like, x or p equals -5, and then algebra 3. So which one do you divide?
On this one?
Yeah.
Neither of them.
Number 2.
Number 2, this was 3t plus 5. So you had to divide by 3.
Oh, so
It's just solving that equation.
So you don't divide both.
No.
That's fine.
Just think if the tricks are confusing you, just solve the equations. Just set up the equations and solve. Okay. Can we try number 5? Do you have any other questions right now before we start that one?
Yeah, I'm good.
Alright, so looking at number 5, what do you have to do first? What's step 1? Set your equation equal to 0. Is that equal to 0?
No.
How could we get it equal to 0?
Move it over.
How am I going to move that 27? Subtract 27. Alright, so once you're equal to 0, what's our next step? Factor. What do you always check for first? GCF. Do we have one? Nope, there's no GCF, so you have a trinomial, and your leading coefficient is 1. How do you try to factor that? Drop it low, so set up your parentheses. What do you drop first? What do you always keep? Our second sign is a minus, so what does that mean about our answers? Opposite, so if we have a minus, we need a plus. We need factors of 27 that subtract to be 6. 9 and 3? Is that alright? Once you've factored, what do you do next? Set them equal to 0, so x minus 9 equals 0, and x plus 3 equals 0. So once we solve, what do we end up getting? X equals 9, x equals negative 3.
So it's just going to be the opposite sign.
Yep. It only changes if you've got something in front of x. So if you had like 2x plus 9 or something like that, it would be different. Questions there? Alright, let's do the last one, number 6. What is step 1? Get equal to 0. Are we equal to 0?
No.
So what do we need to do? Add 5x over. Now I'm going to write this in a weird order. I'm going to do 2x squared plus 5x minus 3. Why did I choose to write it in that order? Descending order. Yeah, you've got to go from your biggest exponent to like no exponent to no variable at all. Do y'all remember that? Descending order. Yeah. That's also like your standard form. Is like how it might be said. So we're equal to 0 and we're descending. What's step 2? What do you always check for first? GCF. Do we have a GCF here? No. So we've got a trinomial, 3 terms, right? Your leading coefficient is a 2. Rainbow that. Yeah. So y'all remember how to rainbow? We take that 2, multiply it to the back. So now we're just dealing with x squared plus 5x minus 6. And we're going to drop it low like we have been. Are we okay? What do you drop first? What do you always keep? Your second sign is a minus, so what does that mean about your answers? Opposite, so if we have a plus, we need a minus. We need factors of 6 that subtract to be 5. Now, when we did that rainbow, we broke rules of math. So how do we undo it now? Got to divide by whatever you multiplied. So 6 divided by 2, will that reduce? What do we get? X plus 3. Okay. And then 1 divided by 2, will that reduce? What do you do with your denominator? Swing it to the front, pull it in front of your x. Once you've factored, what do? Each factor to 0, so x plus 3 equals 0. And 2x minus 1 equals 0. When you solve x plus 3, what do you get for x? So we got negative 3. Okay. And then when you have 2x minus 1, when you solve that, what do you get for x? 1/2. I'm glad that you asked that. Y'all look back to your factors. Before we did the reduce and swing, what did you have? Negative 1/2. What do we end up getting as our root, or our 0? 1/2, yeah. And then over here we had 6 over 2, which that did reduce, so we just kept it as 3. Does that make sense though?
Yeah.
Do y'all kind of see where that stuff is coming from? So, if you're factoring, you have to swing it to the front and write this properly. Okay? If you are just solving, you can make that step and that's okay. Does that make sense? Yep, every time. Correct. We need to write it out just so that, like, because if you are factoring, if you have to stop, you need to know what the proper factors are. Any other questions right now? Are we doing okay? Y'all ready to try some on your own? Yeah? So can y'all do the bottom 4 on your own? Yeah, let's try this. Let's try this.